Welcome to Cheater Confessions. Let's get started with today's story. I remember the sound of Mandy's laugh more than anything else from that day. It was sharp, rehearsed, and loud enough to echo off the glass walls of the mediation room. She laughed like someone who'd already won. "God, Jonathan," she said, shaking her head with a smile. "You really thought I wouldn't come for my share?" Then she turned to her lawyer and added, "He still looks surprised." I didn't respond. I just watched her, calm, steady, hands folded in my lap. Mandy strode into the room 20 minutes late, dressed in white like she was attending some kind of award ceremony. She was still wearing the Cartier bracelet I'd given her for our 10th anniversary. She sat across from me like a queen arriving to claim her spoils. Her attorney, Cassandra Brooks, was younger, flashier, and clearly thrilled to be representing a woman who thought she was about to take half of a $600 million company. "Mr. Ward," she said, nodding like a news anchor, "we've reviewed the marital assets. My client is prepared to accept an equitable division based on the value of Ward Systems and associated holdings." Mandy smirked. "I've been more than reasonable." I looked at her. "You're not getting everything you think you are, Mandy." That's when she laughed again. The big one. The one that got under everyone's skin. The kind of laugh that says, "I already won, and you're just here to make it official." "Oh," she said, eyes twinkling. "You don't get to play tough now, not after ignoring me for 3 years." She reached for the pen and, without hesitation, signed the first stack of divorce papers like she was autographing a bestseller. Then she slid them across the table. "To freedom," she said to Cassandra. My attorney, Thomas Lee, didn't say a word. Neither did I. Because what Mandy didn't know, what no one in that room knew, was that 2 weeks earlier, I had become a very poor man. On paper. And that was exactly what I wanted. 5 weeks earlier, I came home from a client dinner a little earlier than planned. My phone had died halfway through dessert, so I didn't text. I figured Mandy would already be asleep. Instead, I heard music playing in the kitchen, something upbeat and poppy. Then came laughter. Not just a chuckle, real laughter. The kind that starts deep and spills out, unfiltered. I hadn't heard her laugh like that in months. I stepped quietly down the hallway. The kitchen lights were low, and at first I thought she was watching something funny on her phone. But as I rounded the corner, I saw him. A man I didn't recognize at first. Tall, tan, athletic build. Leaning against the counter with a beer in one hand and his other hand wrapped around my wife's waist. "I told you he'd be clueless," Mandy said, running her fingers up his chest. "Jonathan's the most brilliant idiot I know. Genius with wires, dumb as a rock with people." He laughed. "You sure he doesn't suspect anything?" "He still kisses me like he's clocking in for work," she said, grinning. "The man has no idea I've been checked out for 2 years." She kissed him. Long, slow, familiar. That's when I realized who he was. Caleb, her tennis coach. I'd met him twice, shook his hand, paid for his club membership as a birthday surprise for Mandy last year. "I already met with Cassandra," she said, pulling away. "She says the prenup won't hold. Washington law leans in my favor, especially with how neglectful he's been." "Half?" Caleb asked. "Maybe more," she whispered. "By the end of the month, I'll be rich and free, and we'll be on a beach somewhere." I didn't move. I didn't make a sound. I just stood in the hallway, behind the edge of the wall, listening. I waited until Caleb left, heard the back door shut, gave it 10 seconds. Then I walked into the kitchen like I'd just come in. She jumped, just for a second. "Didn't hear you come in," she said, slipping her phone off the counter. "Garage door sensors busted again. I used the side." She nodded casually. "How was dinner?" "Fine. Long." She smiled, tired looking. "I'm heading to bed." I just nodded and watched her walk away. That was the trick. No anger, no accusations, just silence. Let her think I didn't know. Let her think she was still safe. That night, I didn't sleep. I sat in my home office, staring at the family photos, the awards on the shelf, and the company files, my life's work, all of it. She thought she could gut me and walk away smiling. I called my mother the next morning. Ellen Ward had been a tax attorney for nearly 40 years, retired now, but still sharper than most lawyers half her age. She always had a good instinct for people, and she never liked Mandy, not once. When I told her what I'd seen, what I'd heard, she didn't say anything for a few seconds. Then she let out a breath. "Come over. Bring your corporate documents." and don't talk to anyone. Over the next 3 weeks, we moved everything. Ward Systems, my company, valued at over $600 million, was transferred into a family trust under my mother's name. Not hidden, not offshore, just reassigned. Perfectly legal, perfectly clean. My vacation house in Jackson Hole, gifted to my mother, recorded and notarized. Investment accounts, patents, car titles, all reassigned. I even restructured the executive board at the company, made myself a salaried employee. Ellen became the managing trustee, sole beneficiary. I became a name on payroll. I was poor by design, and the beauty of it was, Mandy had no idea. She still thought she was walking into a $600 million jackpot. Thomas Lee, my attorney, ran point on the legal work. He was calm, calculated, and didn't flinch once when I told him what I wanted. The final piece was the prenup. I had it reviewed again, just to be sure. One clause buried in paragraph 14C stood out. In cases of proven infidelity, spousal support, and claims on future earnings are void. 15 years ago, Mandy signed it without a second glance. I remembered her saying, "This is just paperwork, right? We'll never need it." Now she was counting on my silence. For weeks after I saw her with Caleb, I barely spoke to her. No arguments, no drama, just a cold, polite distance. I still made coffee, but I wasn't really there. And that's exactly what she wanted to believe. Once or twice she asked, "Is everything okay?" I'd just nod. "Busy with work." She seemed relieved every time I didn't dig. She had no idea I'd already started writing the end of her story. 3 days before she filed, she came into my home office. "Can we talk?" she asked, arms crossed, eyes scanning the shelves like she didn't want to look directly at me. I turned from my laptop. "Sure." She hesitated. "Do you even want this marriage?" I looked at her. Really looked. For a second, I almost said everything. Caleb, the kitchen, all of it. Instead, I said, "Does it matter?" She blinked. "Wow." I closed the laptop. "If you're asking me that now, I think we both already know the answer." She nodded, took a breath. "Okay." Then she left the room without another word. That was the moment I gave her permission, without technically giving her anything. And that's exactly what she needed. And after 3 days, she filed. The courtroom was colder than I expected. Judge Reynolds, a no-nonsense woman in her 60s, sat at the bench flipping through a thick stack of case notes. Mandy walked in like she owned the place. Cassandra, her attorney, strutted beside her with that fake confident energy lawyers use when they think they've already won. Mandy sat down, crossed her legs, and gave me a smile I'd seen 100 times. "This'll be quick," she whispered to Cassandra. Judge Reynolds looked up. "Let's begin." Cassandra stood. "Your Honor, my client, Mandy Ward, is seeking an equitable division of the marital estate. The estimated value of Mr. Ward's assets and business holdings exceeds $600 million. Given the length of the marriage and our state's community property laws, my client is entitled to half." Mandy leaned back, calm as a summer breeze. The judge turned to me. "Mr. Ward, do you have a response?" I stood up, straightened my jacket, then calmly handed a folder to the bailiff. "Yes, Your Honor. This is my complete financial disclosure." The judge opened the folder. She glanced at the first page, then the second, then paused. "Mr. Ward, according to this, your current net worth is—" Mandy leaned forward, ready for the number she thought would change her life. "Zero." The word dropped like a hammer. Mandy blinked. Cassandra sat up straighter. "Excuse me?" The judge looked over her glasses. "These documents indicate Mr. Ward legally transferred all assets to a family trust few weeks prior to these proceedings." "That's impossible," Cassandra snapped. "That's fraud." "It's legal," I said flatly. "Gifts to family members are allowed under state law. Every document was properly filed, notarized, and recorded. I can provide timestamps and witnesses." Mandy turned to me. "You're lying." "No," I said. "You just assumed I was too stupid to protect myself." Judge Reynolds continued scanning the paperwork. Her tone didn't change, but her eyes said it all. Mandy looked like someone had just cut the floor out from under her. That laugh from the mediation room? Gone. Mandy's hand gripped the edge of the table like she was trying to stop the room from spinning. This is a trick," she stammered. "He moved everything just to avoid paying me." Cassandra cleared her throat. "Your Honor, We request a full forensic audit of Mr. Ward's finances. These transfers are clearly designed to defraud the marital estate. Judge Reynolds didn't even blink. You're welcome to request an audit, but unless you can present concrete evidence of fraudulent intent, these transfers stand. According to the records, the assets were not concealed. They were lawfully transferred before divorce proceedings began. Cassandra tried again. But the prenuptial agreement— Ah, yes, the judge said, flipping through a separate folder. The prenuptial agreement, signed and notarized 15 years ago. And here, she tapped the page, Section 14C. In the event of proven infidelity, spousal support and claims to future income are void. She looked up. Mrs. Ward, do you contest the validity of this agreement? Mandy didn't answer. Her mouth opened slightly, but nothing came out. Cassandra put a hand on Mandy's shoulder. Mandy shrugged it off. I want a recess, she said, almost whispering. The judge shook her head. Not how this works. And then, with a single swing of the gavel, the game ended. Given the lawful transfer of assets and the terms of the prenuptial agreement, the court grants the dissolution of marriage. No division of assets, no spousal support awarded. That was it. Mandy stared at the table like she was still trying to process it. No house, no payout, no beach with Caleb. Just the truth, served cold and quiet. I stood, adjusted my jacket, nodded to the judge. Mandy finally spoke, just loud enough for me to hear. How could you do this? I looked her dead in the eye. Because you laughed. 3 weeks later, Mandy moved into a 2-bedroom rental. Not the worst place in the world, but not exactly where she thought she'd end up after walking out of a $600 million marriage. She called Caleb. He didn't answer. He was in Cabo, with someone else. The supportive circle that had rallied around her during the divorce? Gone, like smoke. Mandy picked up part-time work at a boutique downtown. Designer stuff, brands she used to wear, now folding the same dresses for women who had what she once did. Meanwhile, my life moved forward. The trust was dissolved, the assets returned. Ward Systems was mine again, on paper and in practice. Ellen handed everything back with a satisfied smile and a hug that said, I always knew you had it in you. I didn't celebrate. No champagne, no gloating, just a quiet dinner with Thomas and my new CFO, going over expansion plans. It was a Thursday night when I met Julia. Charity benefit, black tie, boring speeches. I wasn't planning to stay long, just shake a few hands, show face, and leave. But she was standing near the bar, drinking club soda with lime, dressed like she'd rather be anywhere else. We talked for 10 minutes, then 20. She was a corporate attorney, mergers and acquisitions, smart, sharp, didn't ask what I drove or what I did for a living. We talked about everything but money. Eventually, I offered her a ride home. She declined, politely. That's how I knew she was different. We met again a week later, this time for dinner. She asked real questions. She had opinions, not filters. When I told her, carefully, cautiously, about what had happened with Mandy, she didn't gasp or tilt her head like most people do. Instead, she just nodded and said, Sounds like you handled it like a CEO, strategically. She paused. You're not rich, she added. You're just creatively liquid. I laughed. First real laugh in months. Julia didn't care about headlines or court rumors. She didn't care about net worth. The first time I mentioned my company, she interrupted me and said, You're not pitching. Just talk. We kept things simple, slow, honest. For once, there were no games. One night, we were walking past the park near my place, and she asked, Do you regret any of it? No, I said. Not anymore. Mandy thought she was trading up, but what she really did was open a door I might never have had the courage to walk through myself. I didn't need revenge anymore. I had peace, and peace, unlike wealth, isn't something anyone can take. It was late February when Mandy saw me again. Downtown Seattle, gallery opening. Julia and I had just stepped out of a car when I caught a glimpse of someone standing across the street near a coffee shop entrance. Hood up, leaning against the wall, half-shadowed. It was Mandy. She looked thinner, tired, still beautiful in a way, but it was worn beauty now, the kind that came with regret, not confidence. She watched us, didn't wave, didn't move. We walked into the gallery, into warmth, into light. I didn't look back, but I knew she was still standing there, watching, wondering how it all slipped through her fingers. She probably replayed that day in court 100 times. The judge's voice, the word zero, my silence, her lawyer stammering, the disbelief that crept into her face as the truth settled in. She'd thought signing those papers was her victory dance. She'd laughed, flirted, and celebrated before the game had even started. But real games, the ones that matter, aren't won in the first move. They're won in the last. Back at the gallery, Julia was laughing at something one of the curators said. She looked at me, really looked, and smiled like she saw the man I'd become. And in that moment, I felt it. Not revenge, not pride. Closure. Mandy had wanted half of everything. But what she got was exactly what she gave. A final thought crossed my mind as I watched Julia walk ahead, pausing to glance back at me. Some people ruin their lives with one bad decision. Others just keep digging. And me? I just made sure Mandy had the shovel. Thank you for watching.